Welcome to another flip video lesson with Mr. Volkman. Today's flip video is going to be the start of a two-part series about the economy in the northern states and the southern states in the 1800s. This is for lesson 19.4 and 19.5. And if you take a look at the two pictures that I have up on my title screen, I think you should have a really good understanding and idea at least of what the differences in the economy were between those two different regions in our country. Let's begin, shall we? In the southern states, cotton was king. Now, there's kind of a long story as to how that occurred. I'm going to kind of start near the end of that beginning with a gentleman by the name of Eli Whitney. And through some sneaky spy type activities, Eli Whitney was able to invent and come up with the plans for a device called the cotton gin, which allowed cotton to be harvested more effectively and efficiently. Here's a picture of cotton. And cotton's grown, as you can see, like that. In the past, cotton had to be hand-picked, and it had to be by hand separated from the husk. This was not very efficient. So up until the cotton gin, cotton really was not a major player in the economics of the South. However, by 1815, cotton was the South's most valuable export. By 1840, cotton was worth more than all the other exports combined. In fact, the southern states produced 2/3 of the world's supply of cotton. Because of this, a pattern started. They needed more land. Farmers needed more land, which equaled more cotton, because you could grow more cotton, which meant you'd get more money. And if you had more money, you'd need more slaves to pick that cotton. And after you had more slaves, what would occur? But the pattern would start all over again. Because with more slaves, that means, well, you can get more land. And with more land, you can get more cotton. And with more cotton, you get more money, which means you can buy more slaves. And with more slaves, well, you can get more land. And so on and so forth. I think you get the picture. Southern farmers still use slavery with the cotton gin. In fact, the cotton gin increased the valuability, if I can make up a word, of slaves. Unfortunately, Eli Whitney, the gentleman who made the cotton gin, hoped that the cotton gin would stop slavery. You see, he was a northerner, and he created it not to make a more heavy-some burden on slaves, but in fact to ease their burden and hopefully get rid of slavery. However, Southern planters found that you could have less slaves working on cotton gins and then more slaves working in the fields. Here's a picture of what a cotton gin looked like. And here's another artist's representation. In fact, in class, you're going to get to see a movie of how the cotton gin actually worked, and it's a very ingenious method of harvesting cotton. Now, slave agriculture was the main economy in the South. In fact, there was huge wealth in the South. However, it wasn't tied in industry, but it was tied up in slavery. In 1860, the value of Southern slaves was more than the railroads, factories, and banks combined in the United States of America. That's a lot of money tied into slavery. Because again, if we go back to that last slide, the more slaves you have, the more land you get. And the more land you get, the more cotton you can pick. More cotton, more money. Now, in the southern states, you would think, based on what we've talked about so far, that everyone was rich. This isn't so. In fact, wealth was not very spread out, I should say, in the South. In 1850, 17% of farmers held 2/3 of the best land in the South. And the slaves as well. Now, for those of you that have a tough time thinking, 17%, 2/3, let me paint a picture for you. We have, 12 farmers. 17% of 12 farmers is 2 farmers. And that would mean that these 2 farmers own, wait for it, that they own more than half the land. 50% or more of not just any land, but the best land, leaving the other 10 farmers out of luck, because not only do they not have the best land, they also don't have slaves. In a bigger picture, let's say we have 1,000 farmers. 17% of 1,000 is? Anyone? Anyone? Yell it out if you think you know. I didn't hear you. Well, it's 170. So as you can see, it's a very small amount of farmers actually had the best land and slaves in the Southern economy, or in the South, just in general. Because of this, many white farmers were forced to leave their rural farms and go to more urban centers or cities. Now, slavery, as we can see, could be very profitable, as that 17% could tell you. However, it did some negatives. First, it slowed the growth of industry. It slowed the growth of cities, of technology, and innovation, of creating new things. Why in the world would anyone want to change something that's bringing in so much money? Why would you want to expand into new industries? Why would you want to make cities? I mean, building cities takes away that land, which means there's less cotton, which means less money. Technology, again, why would we want technology? We have free labor, we have slaves. Also, slavery contributed to high debt and soil exhaustion. High debt because slaves were expensive. You also had to feed slaves a little bit. You had to make sure they were healthy or else they couldn't work. So that's taking on loans. Soil exhaustion because, well, as farmers will tell you, if you use the same crops over and over and over again in a plot of land, those same crops are taking the same nutrients year after year, and eventually those nutrients are gone in the soil, meaning the soil is exhausted and your crops aren't going to grow very well. So even though we had the southern states bringing in lots of money through slavery and thus through the production and selling of cotton, there was an economic stunted growth. First off, as I mentioned, they neglected industry and transportation improvements. They didn't see the need to improve their railroads or to improve the way they transported things. They didn't see the need to bring in new industry. They had something that worked. Again, why change something if it's bringing you money? In 1860, the southern states had only 110,000 industrial workers. There's that bell. The North, on the other hand, had 1.3 million workers. As this map can show you here, and I encourage you to pause the video and take a closer look at this map. It shows you how many workers there were in each county working in factories. Southern factories also produced 1/10 of all American manufactured goods. That means 90% of all things made in factories were made in the northern states. Southern cities were not really even developed for industry or for finance. They were mainly developed for one thing and one thing only. That was for marketing and transporting cash crops, like cotton. In fact, Mississippi's two largest cities had fewer than 3,000 people. That's not a lot of people for what's considered a big city. Well, thank you for watching this flip video. Again, this flip video was based on educational purposes. So if there's anything you did not understand or something you missed in your notes, please rewind the video and rewatch parts of it. Make sure you go to Edmodo to answer the homework questions. And as always, I'll see you in class.